When a former top communications staffer for Donald Trump announced back in March that he was going to be joining a super PAC that was supporting Governor Ron DeSantis' presidential bid, this was massive news on the right wing, and it has led to a ton of dramas. This is Matt Wolking, who led Trump's War Room Rapid Response Operation back in 2020, considered to be a very important operation and an important part of that operation. So he tweeted at the time, when he announced he was leaving to go with Ron DeSantis, Trump was the president we needed 8 years ago, but to make America great again, our movement needs a disciplined leader who wins instead of loses, never backs down, fights smart, and puts the mission before himself. Every bit of that is now an attack on Donald Trump. I don't know what the reference to 8 years ago is. It wasn't that long ago, was it? But anyway, he's now betting on Ron DeSantis, and he better hope that Ron DeSantis wins, because if he doesn't, there's gonna be some consequences. Trump loyalists are promising that former Trump staffers who work for DeSantis will face the ex-president's considerable appetite for revenge, which he very much has. One Trump advisor told the Daily Beast, recalling Trump quipping that his own camp isn't sending their, quote, best and brightest or geniuses to DeSantis' orbit, quote, he used to say that about Mexico too, the advisor added. In Republican circles, comparing someone to anything having to do with Mexico is about the most vicious insult they can come up with. So if I was Matt Wolking, I would be a bit worried. Another source that's spoken to Trump in recent months said that he was, quote, laser focused on destroying the Florida governor and ensured that DeSantis staffers would be unable to get a job in his operation moving forward, basically saying, don't even dabble with him, okay? You go for me or you've got no future. And here's what Matt Wolking has to say about this whole thing. Ron DeSantis is a conservative winner and undefeated fighter who represents the future. No one in their right mind who wants to see Biden out of the White House would work for Trump now. In the near future, everyone over there will either be fired, indicted, or working for Laura Loomer anyway, which that's pretty good. I like that. That's strong hits. But anyway, look, there's a big choice to be made. Like, a campaign needs a lot of people working on it if it's going to be serious and have a chance. Ron DeSantis needs to win over a lot of people, and it's not like there are a ton of people operating in cutthroat right-wing politics who haven't made clear whether they like Trump or not in the past. And now, look, Ron DeSantis is probably gonna have a lot of money. It might seem like an appealing thing to go work for him, but if you're potentially torching your future, that is a tough choice to make. What do you think of this?
Yeah, so I think this is an interesting story on a couple of fronts. Number one, on the substance of it, the defectors, are they right about Donald Trump and going to DeSantis? Well, it depends. What do you mean? Are they right about how mental he is? Of course they are. And every person who's ever worked with Trump knows that he's a lunatic. In fact, Bill Barr today, his former attorney general, said it's about Trump. It's a horror show when he's left to his own devices. And that I think accurately sums up what every person who worked with Trump but who no longer supports him says about him. They all walk out with their hair on fire going, you guys don't get it. You guys don't get it. This guy's a lunatic, like, one, incredibly malicious, two, incredibly dumb, and lastly, mentally unbalanced. His own cabinet considered using the 25th Amendment against him. So if you're anyone with half a sense in terms of even you're right wing, you're conservative, you want those policies to pass, etc., you wouldn't work for Trump. Now, having said that, are they right in strategy? Not necessarily, because Trump's got like a 30-point lead. He's enormously populist in a populist time, especially in the Republican Party. And he's a vicious fighter and really good at it. And so far, Meatball Ron's countered with nothing, and Meatball, zero, okay? So going over to his team, I know they got like $1 billion over there. If they don't now, they will soon, okay? But they have tons and tons of money. And yeah, you'll make money in the short term, as John said. But if you cross Trump, he will not have you back ever, right? And so, well, unless you go and kiss his ass and prove your loyalty, etc. So that's a separate conversation. But will he consider you a defector and try to eliminate your career? Absolutely. Is that correct political strategy? Sorry, but it is. So you know what it does? It scares the, I'll put it politely, it scares the bejesus out of people. And by the way, if you're a Democrat, you're like, oh, it might be correct political strategy, but it is immoral. Are you sure? Because that's the same strategy Nancy Pelosi uses. Nancy Pelosi said, if you work for a progressive in a primary against an incumbent, you will never work for the Democratic Party again. You tell me the difference between that and Donald Trump. And by the way, also show me a mainstream media reporter who's ever pointed out that super obvious fact.
Yeah, I mean, Trump is a very unique figure in his ferocity, in his combativeness, in how quickly he can insult people. And obviously, at least previously, how viral he went across many different media platforms. You know, whether they claim to dislike him or not, he was a great resource for the CNNs and MSNBCs of the world. And I think we should call it out for what it is. And because he said so many hateful, inflammatory, and false stuff all the time, it would go viral across media platforms, social media and technology platforms. As he just said, you don't need me to say it. Everything is personal for this guy. He's has psychopathic tendencies from what we have seen. But I think it's also worth noting how unimpressive Ron DeSantis is, that he's so far behind. Of course, he hasn't formally declared yet. But what does he have in terms of a campaign when he lacks, I don't know if the word is charisma, but the ferocity and the brutality of Trump? Because Trump takes everything personally, he will go after and try to destroy anyone who he claims doesn't bend the knee for him. DeSantis doesn't have much going. I mean, he just keeps saying woke, 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 which itself is a fabrication of elites and is perpetuated by social media. But more on that later.
Yeah, and look, DeSantis theoretically has his culture war wins, his reputation as being a guy who does the culture war. Well, Trump just demonstrated earlier this week how easy it is to just steal that entire thing. DeSantis' whole thing is taking on education. Trump announced in a video that he's going to literally take away the endowments of woke universities. He just hopped right over DeSantis into Crazyville, and the Republicans are gonna love it. So yeah, I think DeSantis is in for a rough time, particularly because while up until this point, we're gonna add just a little bit of fun to close off this segment. This has been about is this a good decision for them? But is this a good decision for DeSantis to get the people that he's getting? There's some interesting stances on that too. So some are saying that these people, the actual ones going there, are just obsessed with making the news of the fact that they have joined DeSantis. One source told the Daily Beast that they call it masturbating to reporters. This is all for Jeff Rowe's pleasure and bank account. That's the GOP strategist working for DeSantis. So they're just doing all this to kind of look cool, not because it's gonna help him win. And they very much disagree, the two sides, the pro-Trumpers and the pro-DeSantis, is about the sort of war that's coming. So one said DeSantis operatives are taking lame shots at Trump and then talking to Trump operatives like, this is just the job. We're still cool, right? Meanwhile, Trump operatives are planning to rip out DeSantis' liver and eat it with a nice Chianti before making sure everybody who signed on to work for him is permanently relegated to the never-Trump hinterlands of low-dollar political consulting. They conclude by saying they're dealing with savages and acting like it's a game. These people are playing for keeps and the DeSimps aren't waiting for it. Or aren't ready for it, I should say.
That's 100% right. That's one of the most accurate quotes about politics I've seen in a long, long time. And that's why Trump beat Hillary Clinton. That's why he only barely lost to Biden, even though he was one of the worst, not one, he was, well, George W. Bush makes a run at it. One of the worst presidents in American history, because in politics, being vicious is the correct strategy. And the Democrats will never ever do it, at least the establishment Democrats. That's why they get their asses handed to them as they're trying to go high while Trump is taking out their knees. So yeah, one side's like, oh, we're still all establishment buddies, right? Corruption's good, we're all gonna just pass the jobs, the money around and screw over the middle class and the poor, right? Another side's like, no, we're gonna do that, but keep all the money after we murder you. Okay, politically, maybe. Okay, so I got news for you. In almost any field, the savages are gonna win, okay? And so this reminds me, I mean, this is gonna be an interesting analogy, but post-invasion Iraq, where the idiots in Washington were like, oh, now they'll be throwing roses at our feet because we have given them democracy, right? And I was like, no, you've given them chaos. And you know what comes out of chaos? Savages, okay? And when between savages and moderates in a war, the moderates almost never win. The savages always win. And that's why the insurgency raged on for a decade as the most extreme people in Iraq kept winning and winning and winning. And good news, America, now the equivalent of that politically is here at our doorstep. That's the Trump guys. And if you take them lightly and you try to play patty cakes with them, they're gonna rip your face off.
And that's exactly what I wanted to say, which is emotion and affect and cults of personality and our sort of soap opera like culture do matter in politics and do affect people's votes. So it's really, really important that Democrats don't continue to do what they were doing, which was essentially supporting Trump-backed candidates, even though many of them lost, thankfully, in the midterms.
Yeah.
If Trump is reelected, we know how disastrous that will be. And remember, my assessment is many of the votes that went to Biden was Trump messed up COVID so badly. People were so tired of all the chaos and the craziness. They're like, okay, we just need someone normal, boring, get back to the good old. But that is not the situation here. Polls show that they're in a dead heat already. And if you look at Trump's interviews, including the one with Tucker before he got canned, he is ferocious. And he is, I wouldn't say on point, but he has some pretty fiery talking points about everything from Afghanistan to inflation.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.